Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Happy Monday, glad you're here. So my wife, she gave birth on Friday morning, our third kid. Jack is 3 and 4 months. Grace is 2 in a couple weeks. And now John is 3 days old. No one cares much about the third kid. Right, everyone we talk to like, oh, congratulations on your baby. This is so great. Is this your first or your second? We'll say third. Say, oh, it's your problem now? And then that's like the end of the conversation. People act like 3 kids makes us Amish or something. It's pretty amazing, the whole, making a human being inside of you thing. Not to mention the pushing a kid out of you thing. The first 2 kids, I spent all my time north of the border during the birthing process. This time I was holding legs and way too involved. And I got so queasy, I was gonna barf. But you can't be like, excuse me, wife who's been in labor for hours, I need a quick rest. Can we just put a timeout on this? I just need like 5 minutes. Just a quick take 5, I'll be right back. You can't do that. Man, imagine a person inside of your body, right? Like moving and kicking around. My wife and I, we would be on the couch and the baby's kicking like a lot. Like not like a little bit of vibration, but like you can see his arm moving across her stomach. And I'm just looking at that, I'm like, what does that feel like? What are you talking about? What's happening here? And then you think of this baby being formed. How is that possible? And that's what I want to talk about here for just a couple minutes. I just want to sit on this for a second. Be like, how is that possible? How does a sperm and an egg meet together, split into 2 cells, then 4 cells, then 8, then 16, then 32, and they keep going. And then at a certain point, they split off, right? And they're like, you're a heart cell now. You there, your brain. You, sorry pal, gallbladder. And they go do their thing. And then 14 days in, all the cells, they say, all right, everybody, line up. And that's when they form the beginning of the spinal cord, 14 days in. You maybe heard about heartbeat bills. These are bills that would ban abortion past like 6, 8, sometimes 12 weeks. And that's that marker right there. It's called the heartbeat bill because that's when the baby's heart starts beating. That's what people say, but that's not right. That's not when the heart starts beating. That's just when current sonogram technology can detect the heart beating. The heart starts beating in a baby at 22 days. So at 22 days, not only are these cells, 22 days, that's nothing. 22 days, not only are they told, hey, you're a heart cell. But not only that, but then the heart cell knows what to do and then starts dividing into different parts of the heart. Right? So the heart cell's like, oh, you're a left ventricle. And like the left ventricle cell's like, what do I do? Like it's never like what, it knows exactly what to do. And the newly assigned left ventricle cell is like, you got it, boss, and then goes right next to the left atrium, separated by the mitral valve. And they just all become good buddies and they're living next to each other forever now. And how does the mitral valve cell know what to do? I don't know. Everyone knows what to do. How do they know what to do? Where do they come from? Where do these cells come from? How do they know what to become? Who told them what they need to become? Like no kid's ever born with like 20 arms. Like the body, like something cells know. Like, all right, you're an arm. That's all the arms we need. We got 2 arms, perfect. Who told them what to do? You tell me this is random? We're supposed to believe this all happens by chance? My son was formed in my wife's uterus randomly, like every cell just doing a free-for-all? And we're all just hoping that they would align perfectly to make a human? And if not my son, my kids, then the first humans, we're supposed to believe they're just millions of years of trial and error to get it down pat. Millions of years, and we're like, oh, finally got it. You kidding me? That is too far-fetched for me to believe that that's all random. And that's why I believe in God. People think God is too far-fetched to believe, right? God's too far-fetched to believe, so we're supposed to believe the easy, logical thing, and that, of course, is evolution. Yes, because you being formed out of literally nothing over millions and millions of years into a thinking human being totally and completely by chance, that is supposed to be so much easier to believe. And I buy that. I can't wait to look into my son's eyes. I haven't yet. When they're born, they don't really open their eyes much. They're kind of like this most of the time. But I look into the eyes of my kids. We do like this, it seems weird, but it's like 10 seconds. Try to do like 10 seconds a day where I just like prop them up and I just look in their eyes, which is really to say their soul. And we just look into each other. And I look at the eye and I'm like, well, how did the eye first come around? How did the eye evolve from nothing? How would a creature ever even know that or ever think that it ever needed an eye? Right? How at one point were all the cells, we're supposed to believe like all randomly, whatever, and then one day a cell's like, hey, I wish we could see. And all the other cells like, what's seeing? And like, I don't know, let's make an eye and see. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Even Charles Darwin, author of The Origin of Species, who, by the way, never once even tried to explain the origin of species. He just assumed life existed and then started from there. But that's a pretty big leap to make. Right? It's a pretty big leap to go from no life to life and then talk about what happens from that point on and then call your book The Origin of Species and never even talk about the origin of species. But anyway, here's what he said about the eye. He said, to suppose that the eye, with all its imitable contrivances, imitable means impossible to copy, contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for emitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration. The idea that the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. Yeah, me too. I also think it's absurd in the highest degree. And if I may, since we're doing this, we got a few minutes. I want to talk about the fine-tuned universe theory. Because what's true for the impossibly small, right? A zygote turning into a fetus, right? Like that process, that's impossibly small and like doesn't make any sense. What's true for that is equally amazing for the impossibly big. So the universe can only exist if certain physical constants are exactly perfect and exactly where they are. If there's the slightest variance whatsoever, then the universe could not exist. So I'll just give you an example. We'll try to wrap our head around this. And there's dozens, if not hundreds of these, but we'll just pick a few. So the formation of molecules. Everything's got to be just right. So this is from Hugo Ross. He said, unless the number of electrons is equivalent to the number of protons to the accuracy of 1 part in 10 to the 37th power, then the molecule could not exist. All right, so what is 10 to the 37th power? There's 10 with 37 zeros. Guys, can we see what 10 with 37 zeros looks like here, just so we can wrap our head around, okay? So the number of electrons has to be equivalent to the number of protons to that accuracy level, to 1 of that number. Okay, so let's wrap our head around 10 to the 37th power, because it's a ridiculous number. If you took a pile of dimes and you piled them up, to pay for the federal debt, you would need a pile of dimes that cover 1 square mile, 2 feet deep. That's what that. So 1 square mile, so if you're driving, when you're driving today, put on your odometer and clock out 1 mile. Okay, so you need a pile 1 mile long, 1 mile wide, 2 feet deep, full of dimes, and there you pay the national debt. Okay, now that's the debt. How do we get to 10 to the 37th power? Now, pile those dimes to not cover a square mile, but to cover the entire continent of North America. So I want you to cover the United States, Canada, and Mexico entirely with dimes. Fill the whole landmass with dimes. Now think about, if you've ever driven across the country, just think dimes everywhere. If you've ever been up to like Canada or looked at a map of Canada, like way northern Canada, there's no people, just cover that all with dimes from the ground all the way to the moon. Now, do that 1 billion more times. 1 billion more continents of North America covered with dimes from here to the moon, right? Paint 1 dime red, throw it somewhere in that pile of 1 billion North Americas, from here to the moon, and then tell someone to go pick that red dime out randomly. The odds of picking out that one red dime out of the billion full continents wide, moon-high piles of dimes, the chance of picking that one red dime is 10 to the 37th power. That is how fine-tuned our universe must be, and that's just one metric. There's dozens, if not hundreds of these. Each of these things have to be perfectly fine-tuned. There's another constant, it's called the cosmological constant, lambda. That's fine-tuned to 10 to the 127th power. Guys, can we see that one real quick? So we saw 10 to the 37. There's 10 to the 127. Could you cannot comprehend what that number is. And that's the cosmological constant. And if it's not perfect, then this universe, life, doesn't exist. I'll give you one more. Gravity is a simple thing. We can understand that, right? It's not a simple thing, but we can understand it. There's a gravitational constant. It's 6.673 times 10 to the negative 11th. So if the gravitational constant is varied by 1 in 10 to the 60th parts, then life is impossible, right? So imagine, this is another visual. If that visual like blew your mind, you couldn't. Imagine a dial, right? You got dials with different markers on it. So imagine a dial with 10 to the 60th power increments on it. So one more point of perspective, the number of cells in your body is 10 to the 14th power. That's the number of cells in your body, 1 with 14 zeros, right? So now imagine 10 with 60, right? Imagine that number of little marks around a dial. And you can, God or whoever, you, evolution can turn the dial. You have to get it if you're off by one, it's like this, and if any of the constants are off by what, then life doesn't exist. And with gravity, either the stars would expand so rapidly that no stars would form, or would collapse in on itself and no stars would form either, right? Just one little, that's it. And for hundreds of these, of a single variable, life would not be possible. The odds against life are astounding. And the more we study the earth and the universe, the more science proves creation. It's amazing to me, it really is. Maybe the most amazing thing ever, that someone can be a part of this process, whether it's giving birth or your wife giving birth, or whatever, that process. How someone can be a part of that process and still conclude that it's all just random chance. And that is how I became a Christian. Coming up next, I want to talk about Bernie Sanders. Since we're talking about life, he was asked if there's any room for pro-life people in the Democratic Party. I want to play that response next. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. Let's keep this life theme going today. My wife just gave birth like 3 days ago. Bernie, the other day, coming off of a Nevada win now. We'll talk plenty about that a little later and tomorrow, definitely. Bernie was asked about being a pro-life Democrat. Is that possible? Here's what he said.
Then is there such a thing as a pro-life Democrat in your vision of the party?
I think being pro-choice is an absolutely essential part of being a Democrat. If you're asking me, and I think I may be wrong on this, I think in the Senate, probably 95% of the Democrats are pro-choice. You have a few who are not. In the House, maybe even a higher percentage. So that's kind of what my view is. I think by this time in history, I think when we talk about what a Democrat is, I think being pro-choice is essentially an essential part of that.
Yeah. So we'll have plenty of time to expand on my thoughts on abortion as time goes on, but just FYI, I am a pro-life extremist. I will show you moms and babies, I'll show you babies conceived in rape and incest who are grateful to be alive. You'll hear Buttigieg in particular, but many people, but Buttigieg in particular, be just a total coward, as many pro-choice men are, a total coward, by answering the question, it doesn't matter when life begins, or it doesn't matter when I think life begins. It's up to the woman. Are you kidding me? Man up. Man up. Be a man. Take a stand. Real men protect the vulnerable. And there's nothing more vulnerable than an unborn baby. My wife, again, she gave birth on Friday. That was indeed a baby inside of her the whole time. Right? It's not like she gave birth and everyone looked at her like, not a baby. Darn it. Just a clump of cells. No. Baby. There's no way it goes from clump of cells inside the mom, and a mom at that point, when it's a clump of cells, because mom can do whatever she wants, into for some reason, instantly a human being that we must protect the second the baby makes it through the birth canal, right? There's nothing magical about the birth canal that grants personhood. It was a baby the entire time. And my desire to want this baby says nothing about its objective stage of development, an inherent right to live, right? If you're talking about stages of development, you can't look at that and say, well, does the mom want it? Does the dad want it? In that case, it's this. And if it does want it, then that could, no. It either is or it isn't. It is, like, what is it? Clearly it is a baby. Objectively, it's a baby. And it has an inherent right to live. I will debunk every pro-choice argument that's ever been made. I've heard them all. But this is a common one that Bernie started to go down here. And did you catch it at the end? He said, by this time in history. Did you hear that at the end of the clip? He said, by this time in history, and then went on. So his point is, if he were articulate enough to continue that thought, that science has progressed so far, that it's just obvious we should all be for abortion. By this time in history, science has progressed so far that clearly everyone should be for abortion, right? So it's this idea that back in the day when you were pro-life, like that's an old thing, but now we've advanced so far. Morally, ethically, scientifically, we've advanced to the point where, of course, everyone should be for abortion. That's his argument. But of course, he has it backwards. So I just want to give you the very short of this. And we'll talk about this much, much more in the future. Check out this picture here. This is from Time magazine in 1965. It's one of the most popular issues ever. It sold out within just days. This is the first time that anyone had ever seen what a developing fetus looks like. That is a baby at 18 weeks. By the way, when I say fetus, that does not mean it's not a person. Fetus is not instead of human. That is just a description of a stage of development. It's like if I said toddler. If I said, there's my toddler, you wouldn't be like, oh wait, not a human? No, it's just a stage of development. Like this just implies age. So there's a fetus at 18 weeks. So this series had a bunch of pictures of development, and it was here's one of 3.5 weeks. Do we have the 3.5 weeks one? That's actually, we'll start there actually. That's 6.5 weeks. This is usually about as early as most women know whether or not they're pregnant. Right? So if you look closely, and not even that closely, you can see the baby's eye right there, and then underneath it you can see a baby's fingers. That's 6.5 weeks. So again, a lot of women don't even know they're pregnant at that point, or just they find out they're pregnant at that point. And I think we think it's literally just like a group of cells, like 30 cells. But you can say 6.5 weeks. That's what that baby looks like. You see the baby's eyes and fingers. Let's do 3.5 weeks. So this is the top of the baby's head. So those two bulges at the top, if you will, those are going to expand into the two halves of the brain. That's what that is. At this point, the embryo has the beginning of eyes, a spinal cord, a nervous system, thyroid gland, lungs, stomach, liver, kidney, and intestines. And the heart is beating at this point pretty strongly. We're 3.5 weeks. So we'll say 25 days. And that heart's been beating for like 18 to 20, 22 days. About 22 days is usually about right. So 3, 4, 5 days. As we talked about in the last segment, you may have heard of the heartbeat bill. So these are pro-life bills that restrict abortion once a heartbeat is detected. But people confuse that into thinking that's when a baby's heart starts beating, right? Like a baby's heart doesn't start beating until 12 weeks when the heartbeat bill goes into effect. No. That's just when sonogram can detect when a heart is beating. But the heart starts beating well before that. By the way, a unique heartbeat, different from the mom's, with a unique blood type, different from the mom's. But anyway, this gets to my point about Bernie Sanders. By this time in history, when those pictures were taken, people had no idea the truth of human development. Let me slow down here one second. I just want to make sure this is very, very clear. Bernie's presumption is that back in the day, we were ignorant, and now we're so enlightened. Therefore, you need to be for abortion. It's like, whoa, Bernie, no. For all of human history, we had no idea human development, right? We lived in total ignorance of human development in the womb. In vitro fertilization started in 1978. All right? So that's when we first started learning about what happened in the very first days of development. So day 1 through 6, right? And that day 6 is when the zygote was placed inside of the mother's womb. So today we know what happens from day 1 through 14 inside of a mother's womb, because that's as long as we can grow a human embryo outside of a woman, 14 days. And then you place it inside, day 6, you actually place the zygote inside of the woman's womb. And then from that point forward, we can't see anything until 3.5 weeks, which is the picture we just saw a little bit ago. And the reason we stop at 14 days, by the way, the reason we could grow a zygote outside of the womb after 14 days, but the reason we stop is because that's when the spinal cord begins to form. And this is when scientists have decided on their own, no laws, this is when scientists decided that it's unethical to keep that embryo growing outside of 14 days because it's too human. It's too human for the scientists because the spinal cord is developed. Scientists who you think would be desensitized to just a clump of cells in a petri dish. But 14 days is their own self-imposed limit of experimentation. Too human for them at 14 days. But anyway, 1978 is when we first started with in vitro fertilization. Do you know when Roe v. Wade was decided? 1973. 5 years before in vitro was developed, meaning 5 years before we knew anything that happened in even those first few days of development. The sonogram machine was invented in 1956, but it wasn't really used in hospitals until the mid and late 70s. So when Roe v. Wade was decided, people had no idea. Almost no one had any idea. And then at some point, a couple scientists did, but it wasn't until the late 70s when people could look at a sonogram and be like, oh, whoa, I see that now. So when Roe v. Wade was decided in 73, people had no idea what a human looked like in the womb. And I bring all this up because Bernie and Buttigieg and all these people, they try to make the science argument for being pro-choice, but it's the exact opposite. The more we know about human development, the more science catches up to the pro-life position, that this is a human and this is life. Don't let anyone tell you ever again that the pro-life position is anti-science. For all of human history, we could not see what a baby looked like in the womb, and now we can. And you have to intentionally ignore that reality if you still want to take the pro-choice stance. Let me end with this. So I'm a Christian. Years ago, I stopped making biblical arguments for being pro-life, right? Because if you're a Christian, you get it. I can make those arguments too if you want. But most people aren't Christian. And if you're not Christian, then the Bible is not a source of authority. So when I talk pro-life, I don't make biblical arguments. And the truth of it is, I don't need to make biblical arguments. You can make the pro-life case morally, ethically, practically, scientifically. But do not let people like Bernie and Buttigieg give you this, well, science says. No. Not even close, guys. I'll say this one last thing. Been doing radio for 12 years or something. Maybe the first 7 years or so, I never talked about abortion, right? Like Radio 101, you never talk about abortion. It's way too controversial. And just don't touch it. But maybe 5 years ago, I said, heck with that. We talk about it all the time. And we talk about it from countless different angles because I think I believe it is the most important moral issue of our time, period. Pick a side. And honestly, I prefer a particular side, and I hope you choose our side. But even if you just pick one, I'll be happy. Because there's far too many people who have this wishy-washy cop-out answer on abortion. Men especially, I'll let women, this is a women's, blah, blah, blah. No, you coward, be a man. Women want you to step up and choose life. I've met so many women who are so desperate for the father of their child to step up and love them and their baby and to take a leadership role. And really, these women are desperate for really any man in their life. Father could be a father to say, you can do it. You can do this. But men have been so trained by feminists to take this like subservient, you do whatever you want role, that women are scared and they're unsure of what to do. Women and the baby obviously they want, not just need, they want a leader. So don't buy this feminist lie that this is a women's issue. They want you to check out and be a coward. And for far too long, way too many men have obliged. So the reason I bring all this up, David French, he's maybe the leader of the never Trump conservative position. He's a Christian. And the other day, he wrote a very articulate plea for Christians to not vote for Trump. Okay? He said, if you're a Christian, you can't vote for Trump. And I understand the argument. I get it. He's very articulate. He's a smart guy. But if I can make two quick rebuttal points. First, if French's argument is true, then no Christian could vote for any man, right? Because what makes a politician ever sufficiently Christ-like for me to vote for him, right? Like no one is, ever. But in the end, I really I agree with this Babylon Bee headline from January of last year. It says, Christians are just voting for whichever political party is less likely to make his faith illegal one day. Babylon Bee's like The Onion, right? It's a satire website. But that's true, and it's not even really a joke. The Obama administration made a group of nuns pay for birth control, and they made Catholic hospitals perform voluntary surgeries to remove transgendered people's uteruses. Okay? So, that's pretty accurate and pretty real life. So I'm not going to say I'm a one-issue voter, but a lot of the candidates have been asked by pro-life Democrats if there's room for them in the Democratic Party, and these candidates have flat out, just like Bernie did, said no. Are you okay with babies being killed up to birth or not? I'm not. Pick a side. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. I want to play this clip here of Pete Buttigieg at a CNN forum last week. By the way, this is Erin Burnett who's asking him the questions. And it just dawned on me the other day that Erin Burnett from, her CNN shows like Out Front or On Front or whatever. Erin Burnett was a guest judge on The Apprentice with Donald Trump. She would fill in whenever Ivanka Trump couldn't judge, couldn't be there. Erin Burnett was the guest judge. And I did not know that. No one's ever talked about that. And you'd think that would disqualify her from further engagement with him, but instead she just pretends like it didn't happen and it has her own TV show. Anyway, she asked Buttigieg this question here.
My positions are informed by my faith.
So, to the point you talk about God not belonging to any kind of a political party, at the last CNN town hall, you said if your faith calls upon you to help the marginalized, those who are afflicted, to comfort people, to strive for humility and decency, as the Christian faith does. And then I quote you, then I just can't imagine that requires of you that you be anywhere near this president. Do you think it is impossible to be a Christian and support President Trump?
Well, I'm not going to tell other Christians how to be Christians, but I will say I cannot find any compatibility between the way this president conducts himself and anything that I find in Scripture. Now, I guess that's my interpretation, but I think that's a lot of people's interpretation, and that interpretation deserves a voice.
All right, we are going to be back with more.
So listen, this deserves a really thoughtful and thorough analysis, lots of different angles to talk about, and we will moving forward here. But the easiest point, which I'm not going to make, is there's a lot of stone casting from a guy who has sex with his husband and advocates for killing babies at 40 weeks. Right? I'm not going to do that point because we're all sinners. So we'll just call that a wash and we'll move on. As a Christian, if I were looking to the president to be the earthly model of the Messiah, then Trump would not be a good choice. I will grant you that, Mayor Buttigieg. If I were looking for an earthly Messiah to guide me and my family to the pearly gates, I would not choose Donald J. Trump. The prayer breakfast was a couple weeks ago, And Arthur Brooks gave a really great speech about loving your enemy. One of these days, if we have a minute, we can run through it. It's really good. But he gave a speech about loving your enemies. And then Trump got up and said, I'm not sure if I agree with you about loving your enemies. And you look at that, you're like, well, listen, it's not up to you to decide if you agree with that or not, right? If you say you're a Christian, like you have to agree with it as part of it. That's a prepackaged deal, or part, right? In a perfect world, yes, I'd want the president to be a great moral leader as well. In a perfect world, I'd want the president to have the moral authority of Billy Graham. But in this world, I want to hire Trump to, not force nuns to pay for abortion. Let's just start there, as we mentioned in the last segment, right? We showed the Babylon Bee headline that said Christians we're voting for whatever political party is less likely to make their faith illegal one day. That's my standard for voting in a broken world. John Eldredge, like him a lot, Wild at Heart is his main book. Ransomed Heart Ministries. He used to work at Focus on the Family. He wrote this in 2008. This was 2008 about the election. That's what he said. He said there's a sort of moral equivalency that has crept into our thinking. We've come to believe that one issue is just as weighty as another, or that one set of issues balances out another. And we're free to pick and choose according to those things which matter to us. But as believers, we know that some moral questions are far weightier than others. For example, issues of life and death are far more significant than economic reforms that we may like to see. Jesus spoke, Matthew 23:23, of the weightier matters of the law. So some things are more important than others. The scripture does not teach a level moral playing field where all issues are the same. So let's not give way to the cynicism that says there aren't any real differences. Let's also not give way to a naivete that ignores weightier issues because we like other promises that are being made. Abortion. Sorry. Excuse me. I'll be honest, I'm not thrilled about all my options when I step into the ballot booth this year. But I have to keep in mind that there are simply some non-negotiable issues, and on those I can't turn a blind eye. So we're talking about priorities here. That's what this is about. So I actually preached at my church last Sunday about loving your neighbor. We talked about, the series was about loving your neighbor, and this sermon was about politics. And I had 3 points. First, get over yourself. Second, Satan loves division. And third, politics won't save you. Get over yourself, Satan loves division, and politics won't save you. And I ended my sermon with Ephesians 5:11, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness. Have nothing. So if something's a fruitless deed of darkness, it says have nothing to do with it. Most of the internet is full of fruitless deeds of darkness. So it's a pretty simple question. Is what I'm doing right now, will it lead to any fruit for the kingdom? No. Then I have nothing to do with it. But there's more to that in Scripture. Ephesians 5:11 have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness. Here's the rest. But rather expose them. Expose the fruitless deeds of darkness. So it doesn't mean totally check out of the world. It takes a mature Christian to the discernment to know what issues are important for the kingdom of God and saving souls, and which are just, fruitless deeds of darkness, right? Or just like nothing. So I would argue that ending human trafficking, that's probably the worst thing in our society that gets the least attention, right? That ratio of worst, most prevalent thing and no attention is human trafficking. Pornography, prostitution, abortion. These are big things. These are big moral issues of our time that we need to shine God's light. Tax policy, we talk about it from time to time, right? I'm comfortable dabbling in that. But the salvation of souls hangs in the balance someplace else. And I believe the Bible calls us to pray deeply and to dive deeply into these issues. Slavery ended because a group of Christians said, this isn't biblical. That's a major issue. So I just pray that God gives me the discernment to not major in the minors. Matthew 6:33 is seek first the kingdom and his righteousness. Seek first. So I say all this because I would not go to a church where Donald Trump was the pastor, but he's not a pastor. It's okay to vote for the person who's less likely to outlaw your faith. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and then focus on what really matters. And if I got one more second here, this is a new take I never thought I'd have to make. Instead of there's like this big question that's out there, and you're gonna hear Democrats keep trying to throw it out there, and then it's the craziest thing. The Democrats who are throwing this idea, like, can a Christian vote for Trump? They're doing that through Buttigieg, right? That's like, wow, what are you talking about? But this question of can a Christian vote for Trump, are you, like, is Trump Christian enough for you to vote for him, right? Like, that's the question. How about this? Is Mike Bloomberg too much of an astrologist for me or anyone to vote for him? Check out this he put up on his Instagram.
You fellow Aquarians, I just want you to know that we are thoughtful, we are independent, and even keel. And it will not surprise you to know that our current president is not an Aquarian, he's a Gemini. I knew you wouldn't be surprised.
First, Gemini? Gemini? I'm not, a witch, but I think it's Gemini. I don't know, but whatever. That's astrological pandering. That's a new one. I didn't think we'd have presidential candidates aspiring for the casual astrologists vote. Now I want to go into the whole thing, but is there anything more absurd than astrological signs? Right? The idea that the month you're born determines your personality, and the movement of the planets somehow determines your fate moving forward. Like, what are you talking about? I just talked to someone the other day because our kid was just born a couple of days. People are like, oh, he's whatever. I was like, okay. Like, what do you mean? Oh, well, the planets are here. That makes him a Stegosaurus. And I'm like, what are you talking? So if we're going to have this question of can a Christian vote for Trump because he's what? Mean to his enemies? All right, well, let's go. Let's have that question. Let's keep going then. Right? I'll go to that party. Now let's ask if you can vote for any of the other Democratic candidates. But how about Bloomberg? Because he believes that the planetary alignment has more to do with you and your fate and your personality than God. That seems to me to be a bit of a problem for Christians as well, or any rational person. But listen, don't let any of that distract you. Or I should say, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. Don't be tricked. There is no Democrat running for office who's upset that the president isn't Christian enough. Let me say it again. There's not a single Democrat who's running for office right now who's like deeply, profoundly upset that the president isn't Christian enough, okay? They want to take down Trump and you any way they can, and they'll pretend to shame you to do it. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. I know we're a little late to this party. This video was pretty popular last week, but I still think it's worth playing here in case you haven't seen it. But even if you had, it's worth a friendly reminder. So this is a video from inside the University of Virginia's Multicultural Center. Here it is.
Public service announcement. Excuse me. If y'all didn't know, this is the MSC, and frankly, there's just too many white people in here, and this is a space for people of color. So just be really cognizant of the space that you're taking up, because it does make some of us POCs uncomfortable when we see too many white people in here. It's only been open for 4 days, and frankly, there's the whole university for a lot of y'all to be at, and there's very few spaces for us. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Oh. There's so much wrong with that. From the very beginning, the video kind of starts off early, so I'm not exactly sure that this is what she does, but I'm pretty sure she walks up and goes, public service announcement. Oh my gosh, that's excruciating. And then she ends it. Did you see her smile at the end when she sat back down? That smile, that smug smile, that's the part that's like the most, like she's so proud of what she did right there. And then in the middle, that's the beginning, and the middle, at the end, and then in the middle, she refers to herself as one of us POCs, people of color. Like, we're a POC. I'm a POC. Wow, man, that's amazing. And this idea that that she says there's the whole university for y'all to be at, right? The whole university for you all white people to be at. I hear that, I think, what are you talking about? You're a student at UVA. There's the whole university for you to be at. Right? The implication she's making here is that there currently are spaces at UVA where she can't be as a POC. Right? Like she is not allowed on the white part of campus. So because there's parts of campus, like certain dorm rooms and dorm buildings and classrooms that she's not allowed into, she really needs a black person space. She needs a POC space because there's other, like, what are you can go anywhere you want. So YAF, it's the Young America Foundation. They went around UVA's campus to see if people actually agree with her. And I'm actually genuinely amazed. I don't get amazed much anymore by things, right? But I'm actually pretty amazed by the level of brainwash that these kids are. Here.
I think that as a white person, I don't want to say that I should be allowed anywhere, and I think it should be up to those organizations to decide.
Just that sentence right there. What are you, like that? That's like cultish. As a white person, like that, just stop right there. Like white, it's just, we just talked about abortion 2 segments ago, right? It's like as a man, right? Like that's the beginning of this identity politics. Like if you're a certain group, then you can't have an opinion about a thing. Like just crush that. That is such a ridiculous concept. So there, she's buying that. That's the first premise, right? Like as a white person, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that I can't. Like my brain can't even. I don't want to say that I should be allowed anywhere, and it should be up to those organizations to decide where I should be allowed because I'm white. Like that is such perverse thought. All right, there's lots more here.
Pretty much fine. Like if that space is for them, I think it should kind of agree like that. As like a white person, I guess just we have more areas where you can feel comfortable. And if they don't feel comfortable in those other areas, that it's nice for them to have a space where they do feel comfortable.
Be mindful that it is a space where students of color go to be comfortable and to feel safe and supported. And when there's white students that are in there doing something that could be perceived as disrespectful, I mean, you have to understand that that could be hurtful.
I think like white people need to be aware of the fact that it's not a space for them and make sure that like when they're entering their space or that space, they're not like taking up the space for other like people of color that want to use it.
This is a multicultural space and it doesn't look multicultural, then the multicultural people at UVA feel less comfortable here.
I think that UVA's statement was ridiculous and that it's a multicultural student space and that white people need to be aware of the spaces that they occupy on grounds and that we need to all be aware of the kind of the way that we occupy spaces around everything, and I think that she had a good point, and she wasn't aggressive. She was very clear and concise with what she said, and she had a good point.
Did you hear the same word used over and over and over and over again? I think one guy used the word 4 times in like 5 seconds. Did you hear the word? Space. Space. There's the word space. Oh, it's their space, this space, that space. The first guy, like this thinking of space, he said space for them. The first guy who spoke, he said, there needs to be a space for them. Look how messed up that is. A space for who, bud? Who are you talking about? The blacks? Is that what you're... Just say it. Just say it. The blacks need a space for them. That's what he said. I don't say. He said they need a space for them. Those are his words. Who? The blacks? Are you kidding me? Take that exact same video. Take that exact same kid. Put him in the 50s. And he's a legitimate horrible person, a horrible racist. Right? He's like, hey, the blacks need a space. We need a space for them, right? But today, he's the wokest kid in town for saying the exact same thing. He's saying, hey, the blacks need a space. They need their own space. Same thing, you're saying the exact same thing. But now, like back then, he's a racist. Today, he's like, oh, kiss your feet. You're such a great woke white person. But they're all using that same, all the buzzwords, right? Space is a big one. Comfortable, safe. They're all brainwashed. Multicultural people, you heard that one a few times. Who is a multicultural person? What are they talking about? There's no space in the world more safe and comfortable than a college campus. There's no time in history where it's been safer, and there's no place in the world safer than a college campus. Name a place that's safer. all the space, like you're entitled to space, there's different spaces. What a funny term. I've never heard it used so flippantly. I need this space, this is our space, this is your space. Jeez. Amazing, people are embracing this it's self-segregation, right? We used to preach integration. But this, what you just heard, that's just a modern version of this is a white water fountain, this is the black water fountain. This is the white person space, this is the black person space. It's the same thing. I think we got one more clip.
It felt like a safe space, and now it does not feel like a totally safe space for people who do not feel safe outside of that space.
Talking about there's no safer space on the planet. Jeez, listen, I want to be a good listener. All right, I want to have empathy and understanding, and I want to hear their stories, and I do. If I was there, I would listen to their stories, and we'd have a good conversation. But at a certain point, there has to be some objective truth. At a certain point, you got to say, guys, you're a student at UVA. It's a great school. You can do anything you want on campus. You can go anywhere you want. You can succeed as much as you want. It's 2020. There's no crime on UVA's campus. Like, you're fine. You're fine on any space here, any space anywhere. Like, all the spaces are fine. There's never been a more privileged person on the planet than you right here, right now. In the black space, in the white, any space, doesn't matter, any space. Thomas Jefferson founded UVA, right? He used to own slaves. And now you are at that university. So, right? Like, that's a great victory. So before you go talking about spaces and blah, blah, imagine yourself doing all that whining and complaining to one of Thomas Jefferson's slaves. Right, go have that conversation. I don't feel safe in this space. All right, no, don't have to play that game. So imagine telling your plight to one of the people who works at UVA, one of the custodians, one of the dining hall workers. All right, go do that first. Go tell someone who's working in the back of the dining hall making like 30 grand a year and tell them how unsafe UVA is, how terrible your life is. I lied, we got one more clip here.
They needed to be cognizant of the space that they're taking up. And I think that that's a very valid point because this university is full of history that's basically oppressing people of color. And so it's very hard for people to have a space where they feel like safe. And the MSC is a place where we feel safe.
So listen to what she did there. She messed up the tenses. So she said UVA has had a history of oppressing, like currently. So it had a history of that currently still oppresses people. Not it had a history where they oppressed people of color. It had a history where it's oppressing currently still right now in real time people of color, which is absurd. If anything, people of color are oppressing whatever racist history UVA had, and that's good. That's good. Oppress that racist history every single day. Go to class, succeed, excel, and oppress the racists who used to go there. Prove every racist who ever went to UVA, prove them wrong. Prove to them that you, a POC, can succeed. I hate that term so much, a POC. It's so cultish. But prove to them that you can succeed. There's no way that all the people who fought for equality did that so that you could whine and complain once you have it. You currently have it. You have all the equality you could possibly imagine, and you're still whining and complaining and then going back on exactly what they were trying to stop. So bottom line, for the rest of us, when you hear people say we need a safe space, safe from what? Not that attitude. That's not the right attitude. That won't go over well. From what, you idiot? Don't do that. Say, from what? Safe from what? What do you say you need a safe space. Safe from what? See, get some specifics. And if you ask them enough, I think they'll start to see that there's nothing to be afraid of. And that's all been made up in their mind. And the problem is, I don't even really blame these kids because the school sets these kids up for failure by even building a multicultural student center. And then the kids go ahead and they profit off their victimhood, obviously. The whole thing's really sad. Slater Crusaders, hope you have a wonderful day today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk a lot more tomorrow about Bernie's big win in Vermont, setting up for South Carolina. Tomorrow, sorry, I'm like screwed up with the days. Been in the hospital for a couple of days. So tomorrow is the debate, is that right? South Carolina. So we got, obviously we'll preview that and see the road ahead for Buttigieg and Biden. And I have a prediction to make about Bloomberg. So we'll get back in the politics world, much more tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. True story, Mike Slater. Spread the word.